You're listening to Behind the Lines, a podcast presented by In Play Live and powered by Pinnacle, the #1 sportsbook where winners play and never get limited. Go to pinnacle.com/InPlayLive to sign up and get in the game.
Politicians and lawmakers will often introduce bills that they know stand absolutely no chance at being approved, simply to say, hey, look, this is what I'm doing. No one proved it. No one backed me up, but I'm doing this to protect my constituents from this threat of proxy betting. So it could be that. It could be something like that. I don't know.
Which is crazy to think that somebody's constituents would be at risk because of proxy betting. I mean... Hello, welcome in. It's Behind the Lines, powered by Pinnacle, purifying the sports betting industry. I'm Shane. He's Pace. We got a show for you today. I'm trying threads. We got a regulatory update with the journo, and we'll touch on this bill in Iowa that would criminalize winners and the Gridiron Grind Conference Championships. Stay tuned for that at the end of the show. Gosu will be here. But first, Pace, how was your weekend? How was the sports betting weekend? How'd it go?
Oh, incredible. How about you?
Yeah, I had a great weekend too, man. Not so much on the NFL side. I mean, NFL was fine, but I did great with basketball.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I definitely was mostly focused on football and hockey. I don't want to say I didn't bet anything else. I've definitely started, betting some of this college hoops, but yeah, it's been a month of just absolute magic on my end, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah. I was checking out the tracker recently, Pace, sort of day to day, and you really have been crushing it, dude. I was like, well, Pace is on one. Like, he's rolling.
I mean, when you're betting for a living, for lack of a better term, you're always capable.
Right.
The next losing run's around the corner, but we obviously did a big feedback, sort of a feedback survey with the group, and there's some things I read in there that kind of motivated and inspired me, and I think that's helped. I've really just tried to stay in my lane and pick my spots, and I think that's helped. And things have worked out, like the Chiefs taking a safety to cover a plus 10.5. That we thought we had lost. So, there's always gonna be some things where you can go, yeah, I'm doing all these things well, but you can do all those things right and have it not go your way. And there's just been a couple as of late, like a Mark Andrews drop 2-point conversion that also went our way. So, yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. Those moments, that safety, the intentional safety. I'm sure that had the gambling conspiracy theorists just up in arms out there. Depending on what side of the line you fell on. Right. What a moment there. But
what's interesting about the conspiracy theorists? They can head over to our Instagram and watch Kenny calling out them doing it before it happens, because teams do it for a reason.
Yeah,
and that's precisely what he
did.
That
was incredible too, for Kenny to be like, oh wait, they could do this. It could happen. Yeah. And then I'm seeing other people messaging going like, well, Andy Reid's the guy to do it. He's the coach that would do something like this. And then sure enough, it happened. It was pretty cool to sort of watch it unfold, in that way.
Absolutely electric is what it was.
It really was. It was super cool. In fact, that Pace, I think you posted the video on Instagram. People should go check that out if you haven't seen it yet, or you missed the moment. It was an incredible moment. Very, very cool to sort of watch it unfold. Well, speaking of perhaps staying in your lane, and we're on the social media talk here, I'm stepping way out of my lane. Okay, so I don't do a whole lot of social media generally, or haven't in the past. I do a little bit here and there, but okay. As sort of, we're on this podcast, we're in this space, and I figure, what, new year, let me jump into it. Let me really sort of start to engage with people in the betting space. In sort of a more regular, consistent basis. So obviously, we do the podcast here. We bring on great guests. I have lots of awesome conversations that, with our guests, and Pace even between us. But I don't really engage with a whole lot of people outside of the In Play Live community when it comes to sports betting, and people sort of out there, in the betting world, whether that's gambling Twitter or on Instagram, and I thought to myself, Threads is sort of newer. I know the kinds of conversations that take place, especially on gambling Twitter. I've sort of followed that stuff, but not engaged all that much. And I felt like maybe that, I could enter that space and really sort of, try to engage with people, but I feel like I know what I'm getting there. And so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go on to threads. I'm gonna start, checking in on sports betting threads and sort of follow things along here and see what's happening out there. And maybe, put out some information that can maybe help people. Stuff that we're doing here on the podcast and that kind of thing. So, I hopped into the sports betting section of threads, and dude, it was like flooded, just absolutely flooded. More than 90% of the people in there are touts. They're just trying to sell picks. They're offering free picks. Join my Discord. Here's some free picks. Give me tips. Tip me, send me money because I'm giving you free picks. And Pace, it's not just picks, but they're all fucking long shot parlays. Like, it's like, hey, tail my 10 pick parlay and then give me a tip afterwards.
Just got to hit one.
You just got to hit one. That's what they're saying. They just got to hit one. And of course, all of them are posting, hey, hit this one, hit that one. We won this money over here. If you're not tailing us, tail us now. Join my Discord now. It was literally like just flooded with everybody saying, here's my parlay, tail me, tail me, tail me. It was like, what's happening out here? And then, of course, you've got a bunch of people that are like, saying things like, I just started tailing this person, but they lost. Oh, that sucked. Or oh yeah, I've been tailing and they were on a hot streak, but now it's gone, it's gone south. And then there's lots of people out there that just genuinely want to learn how to win, right? They're asking some great questions. And then I just see them get bombarded by these people trying to sell picks, and it's just like, oh, you want to win here? Tail me here. It's just like, wow. I was really sort of, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. In Pace, you're probably sitting here going like, Shane, what did you think you were going to see? Because I know you engage online a whole lot more than I do. And you've sort of been in the space longer and sort of dealing with this kind of thing longer. But, I was really sort of kind of frustrated by it. So then I start making a few comments. Okay. Like, hey, that like the sports books love it when you make these big long parlays. It's like their biggest profit maker, stuff like that. Oh man, did some of these touts get upset? Oh dude, they got angry with me. They had one person, start calling me out as a dad. Like talking about my yeah, like they got really personal, dude. Like they were just mean. Like it was just like, and I'm never gonna attack somebody's personal character or go at somebody, in a way that is going to try to make them feel bad. I'll comment on your picks or parlays and whether I think that's a great idea or not, but I'm not going to go and attack you. But some of these people just came at me. And one of them actually I thought was funny. He thought I referred to him as a tout, right? That's sort of a general term we use to describe people who are posting picks and trying to get people to sell picks and that kind of thing. He thought I was name calling. Like he thought it was like derogatory. Like I was like bashing him by using that word. It was just like,
Shane, the definition of what you just said is insulting.
Is it insulting? I don't know. It's thrown around all the time. I figured it's just a term now. You feel like it's insulting to call someone a tout?
By the definition you just gave.
By the definition,
which is precisely what that person is.
Well, it's what they are. I don't know. Don't they know they're doing?
Just had a person like touting their picks and selling their, like their betting service, like In Play Live does.
Yeah. Well, right. I mean, I don't think it's, they're selling terrible picks, but I didn't say that. It was more just like, hey, these are long, sharp parlays. Why are there so many touts out here trying to do this? It's unbelievable how many there are. And there's such little conversation around positive expected value. Like when I say that there's so little, I didn't see any. Like it's hardly any. So, I started posting a few things. I posted our show from last week, posting a few things about parlays, posting a few things about positive expected value. And sure enough, I did get a few people here and there kind of, being like, yeah, engaging a little bit and that kind of thing, and got a few, added to my followers, which was another thing that some of these touts came at me for. They're like, who is this guy? He has no followers. I had like 40 followers base. I've got like nobody, following me, which is whatever. I'm sort of new to the space and I'm rolling along here. That kind of thing doesn't bother me too much, but I understand how, people think you need to have a following to be credible. I get that.
I mean, a lot of those guys might be paying for some of their followers, or using,
maybe
using various bots or whatever to generate them, right? So it's like this is the thing. This is the power of social media, right? So in my previous career, if you told me that I was presenting to 40 people today, it would have been a big day for me. A really big day.
Right.
Really, really, really big day.
You're getting up in front of a room. You got to talk to a meeting kind of thing, a boardroom or something.
Yeah. I think the biggest one I ever did was like 110 people, and it was amazing. It was so much fun to do, but I was nervous and, this and that.
Right.
And, with social media, you can reach millions overnight or in an hour for that matter. Right. And 40 in a short period of time is strong. Shane, why the fuck did you go over to Threads?
Well, it's newer.
You could have done this on X or Twitter.
I could have done it. I could have done it on X or Twitter. Absolutely. I feel like X and Twitter is older pace. I think that's part of it. I think that there's an older demographic there. I think that there's a conversation there where maybe there's already a whole lot of preconceived notions around positive expected value, and I thought that maybe that is the place I should have gone if I wanted to just focus on that. But I think a big part of this too, Pace, is sort of helping shift a culture away from the negative sides of sports betting and, chasing those long shot parlays. And we talk a lot about that, here on the show. And maybe that's such an uphill climb, or, it's like I'm fighting against a tidal wave of crap out there by going to Threads yeah, I mean, look, I didn't sort of, plan it out that thoroughly, perhaps, but I just said I want to engage, and maybe this is a place to do it. It seems like a lot of people are having more positive conversations on a place like Threads than they are on Twitter. And so, I think that's at least what I hear out there.
Sounds like you went through that yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a bad dad.
I'm a terrible dad. Yeah.
But here's the thing, right? So like, if you go political and you're like, I'm going to tell you why you should vote for Donald Trump to someone who is not going to vote for Donald Trump, you probably are wasting your time. It's probably going to fall on deaf ears, and it might even make that person a little bit angry. We learned early on just from our ads, let alone actual social media posts or like, going and commenting and interacting with people. When we did ads about parlays, the single biggest defense of why we were wrong from the people that commented, very similar to, I guess, what you dealt with, was them showing a screenshot or them having hit a parlay before. That was their argument, right? So if you're making $10, $2,500, $100 bets and all of a sudden you returned, 4 figures or more potentially on the parlay that you made, you have absolutely no idea what your win-loss is over the course of time. You just know that you hit that bet, that you were right, it paid, it was exhilarating, and you cannot take that away from that person. There's no discussion or understanding of value whatsoever. And if you're engaging with people like that, can you, kind of get someone out of that mindset? Sure. But in general, it's not gonna go in a way where you're just like, how does this person not understand? Or like, why are they not getting this? You're probably talking to the wrong person. And unfortunately, a lot of young people in the industry that is how they think. Right.
Yeah, and Threads is, I think, a naturally younger platform, meaning that I think a lot of the people on Threads are of a younger demographic. I'll say this though too. You're probably right. If I'm going out there and I'm trying to engage with a lot of these touts out there, I'm probably not going to change many minds. They're set in their ways. They've got a plan. They're going to sell their parlays, and that they're going to make money off doing that. But there's a lot of people out there that are just trying to figure out how to win. They just, they don't know how to win. They're flooded by these parlays, and they think that that's maybe the way, but I guess I'm there to say parlay not the way, and if I can just even reach a couple of people out there and sort of bring them into our positive EV tent, get them to think about what that means, then maybe it's worth it.
Totally. And so there's a guy he's probably on all channels, but I've come across him on Instagram, and I'm sure he's on TikTok too, for those that have access to it after what's transpired in the past week.
Yeah.
But it'll be like a wrecking ball that goes through a construction site, and the guy edited a video that hits him or something like that. And he's like, how did I survive this, or whatever it is? And it's something that was actually edited or created. And the guy that comes in and debunks these viral videos is like physicist, genius, mathematician galore. And he'll take the original video, he'll show the clip of it, and then talking faster than what appears to be listening to a podcast on 2x, but it's actually him talking at this speed. The wrecking ball will be like, oh, I hit this wrecking ball and I survived. He'll be like, no, you didn't. And then he goes into the mathematics and the physics of every single aspect of the video. And he'll go, using Google Maps, I calculated the distance from here to here at the location that you are at, which I found out was here from doing this and that. And he breaks the whole thing down, breaks all the math down, and debunks these viral videos that were in fact false or edited. So the reason why I bring him up is because he gets through to, let's call it, the uneducated viewer, and actually gives validity to the claim, countering the people that believed it. That actually makes you go, oh shit, like I was wrong. I thought this was real, and now this person's clearly proven that it isn't. So the reason why I bring this up is because if you're engaging with, say, a parlay like this, posting before the outcome and then posting after the outcome as, oh, you shouldn't have done this. So you see this with a lot of like tipsters, obviously, or whomever. There's a lot of, obviously there's someone out there right now on gambling Twitter that's getting a lot of eyeballs with being essentially the new Vegas Dave. If you debunk it before it's won or lost, that's a much better approach. And with a parlay specifically, you can calculate the expected loss of the wager, or you can give the data behind the expected loss of the wager, regardless of the outcome. You could also put the parlay together and use potentially another sports book where it pays better on that book. You could look at the closing line value relative to each of the picks that are on the parlay. And then you could explain and actually be able to debunk whether or not this person did the right thing. Will that still fall on deaf ears? Well, I can give you the answer to that. Yes, it will. But you're going to turn a few more heads where you go, hey, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. Let's see what he's talking. Let's actually see what he's selling, for lack of a better term.
Right. Well, I that's a great analogy there with the guy, because you're always going to get those people that just won't believe the truth. But I figure if there's at least a few people out there that are looking for it and they're open-minded, that maybe, we can sort of bring them in to our community and get them thinking about, things like positive EV, and not just that, but, wagering, responsible wagering, tracking, bankroll management, pace, all the things that we sort of
and how to win,
right? And all of this is part of
the strategy.
Here it is, right?
Here's the strategy.
Here it is.
Here they are. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, get these things figured out, right? These are the fundamentals of winning, right? These are the sort of the base foundational elements that you got to figure out before you're ever going to win long term.
Right.
And sort of just getting people to think about some of those basics, I think is worth it. So I'm going to keep at it. If any of you out there are listening and you're on Threads, please find me, give me a follow. It's just my name, which is probably a whole other thing. I shouldn't just put my normal name out there, but it's just my name, Shane.Mercer. So you can find me quite easily on Threads. Give me a follow, join the conversation, engage with me out there. Maybe we'll bring in a few other people into sort of the positive EV tent. And if you know Shane, you can defend whether or not he's a good dad to his haters. Please.
His 40 supporters and his 12 haters.
And my 12 haters. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I could use any help I can get out there. Apparently, it's tough out there, man.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
There you go.
All right. Well, anyway, I'll keep you guys updated on how things go on Threads, and of course, I'll be sharing our episodes on there. And I even posted a couple past ones, Pace, because I'm finding that it's amazing how much we've done. We're approaching our 100th episode. I think we're like 4 or 5 away, and I'm going back and I'm looking. I'm like, wow, some of these are just such solid resources and learning tools. I posted the one about chaos on there because we saw some chaos after the Saturday games there where the Lions lost, and we had the intentional safety and all that sort of stuff. It was a perfect episode to sort of put out there as people were losing their minds over what they had seen, and sports is chaos, and so that was a message I was trying to share. And
what's funny, Shane, I can't remember, you called yourself a betting enthusiast or something back then.
Yeah.
You were, when we shot that, we were talking about it beforehand, and you were just kind of like, your mouth was open a little bit, like, what the hell's Pace talking about right now? So you've come a long way in the 90 plus episodes.
Big time. Absolutely. Yeah. This podcast has been instrumental in my betting journey, 100%. And it's just been a lot of fun. So anyway, I've been posting some of the past episodes, so I'll continue to do that. And anyone out there, find me on Threads, hit me up, engage with me. Let's get the conversation rolling around Positive EV and bring some more people into the tent of actually winning at sports betting and learning some of these fundamentals. I think that's we'll have a fun time doing it, and we're going to get some haters out there, but fuck them, who cares? There we go.
Exactly.
All right, with that, I think it's time. Let's bring in our guest. Robert Linnehan is a regulatory writer and editor for Sport Radar. You can find his articles at sportsbettingdime.com. Robert, thanks so much for joining us.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me today.
Really excited to get into your work as we cover the regulatory landscape quite a bit here on this podcast. So very excited to get into that with you. But first, I got to ask you, how did you find your way into this space? Do you bet on sports? Are you a successful sports bettor? What do you like to bet on?
Well, all right. I'll take that 3 at a time here, or 1 at a time here. How I got into it. I've been a journalist for like almost 20 years now, which seems long to think about when I say it out loud, but a very local journalism background, editor, writer for a number of small newspapers, sort of got my start with the daily newspapers, did some medical journalism back in the day, but how I got involved with sports betting regulatory work, I did a lot of freelance sports writing for a very popular and very large Philadelphia sports blog called Crossing Broad. They were eventually acquired. The owner of the blog, the creator of the blog, Kyle Scott, he really early got into the sports betting affiliate game. He was one of the first people to figure out, like, hey, look, I can start putting these links up on my site, get people to sign up for FanDuel, DraftKings, make a lot of money this way. And he gained quite a bit of attention from this English affiliate company, XL Media, who basically acquired him and a couple other sites in the Northeast. Kyle knew sort of my background just from working with him, knew that, I have jumped from covering a lot of different topics and figured, hey, look, we need somebody to cover this, the regulatory landscape from a, journalism standpoint. And we think you'd be great for it. So that was right in 2020, early 2020. Been doing it ever since. Obviously now with Sport Radar. Sport Radar acquired my division in XL Media a couple months ago, and been doing it ever since. Never really envisioned reporting on this for a living. Didn't even know it was really a job prior to him coming up and asking me to do it. But it's been great. In terms of your other questions, I don't do a lot of sports betting myself. If I do, it's like $20 here or there. I don't have the time or the patience to, put any type of research into it. It's all by my gut, which is like the number one thing they say not to do. to be a sports bettor. But, if I do, I have one clear rule, and I just can't. The only thing I live by is I don't bet for or against any of the teams I root for. I can't divorce the bet from the outcome. So, as you can see from back there, I'm an Eagles fan. So yesterday, if I had bet on the Eagles to cover, I think it's finally settled on 6.5 at the end. They won by 6. Now, the win, them getting the NFC Championship, would have been marred by me losing a $25 bet on them. I can't divorce that. I just can't divorce it. So that's like my only hard and fast sports betting rule. I stay away from teams that I root for, just because I'm not that disciplined of a bettor that people say oh, well, hey, look, the joy of them winning makes up for the loss of the bet. And that just doesn't work for me. I can't stand it.
What's interesting about that whole discussion that you just brought up is we always want to make bets that are in line with a team's motivation. So did Jake Elliott want to miss that PAT? Of course not. He tried, right? He tried to make it, but that's set up for the missed cover.
2 of them, missed extra points.
Yeah.
Right. And then obviously when that stuff happens, the whole world reacts to why they lost as things being rigged or, whatever the case. But interestingly enough is if they were down 14, the Rams would have gone for 2. So had they have converted the 2-point conversion, it still would have likely been a 6-point game if Jake Elliott did make that PAT, because there's a whole bunch of analysis that's causing coaches to go for 2-point conversions down 14 that kind of started, I would say, about 3 seasons ago, but really took sort of wave last season in the NFL. And the Eagles, they want to win the game. They want to win the game by as much as they possibly can, but late in the game, they're just trying to protect a W. They're not trying to sit there and make sure that, Rob and his crew covers 6.5, right? So, there's some really good opportunities on the other side of those bets sometimes where we'll actually try to strike live and go, okay, what's the motivation of the losing team? What will they do, late in this game? Would they kick a field goal? Would they go for 2? All that kind of stuff. And that's where you can sometimes actually make some profits. But I love that you brought that up, because it is a really good piece of sort of a good lesson for any sports bettor is your fanship is actually a detriment to you from a betting standpoint. You're better off to just enjoy the game as a fan and leave it that way if that's, how the betting's going to affect you.
It drives me crazy. And I mean, it's look, if you can do it, it's great because, like I mentioned about the research, I mean, you don't know, your team, the team that you've watched every single week for the last 18 weeks better than any other team in the league. So, you've pretty much done your research just by watching every game, watching every snap, watching every minute. So if you can sort of divorce it, I mean, it's not a bad thing, but just for me personally, I can't do it. And I don't want to bet on the Rams to cover, get out of here. I don't want that. And God forbid, the Rams win. And it's all right, they won. I don't get to watch the Eagles anymore, but I won $25 on a bet. That's supposed to make up for it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm not a big sports bettor to begin with. So if I do, it's very few and far between. And I'll probably stop for many months. Well, I guess maybe I'll dabble in March Madness when that comes up. But after that, I'm not looking at baseball. I'm not looking at any of that stuff. I'll jump back in maybe a little bit next football season, but it's a very limited time for me to do anything in sports betting.
Right.
I love that. I've actually got a friend. So Robert, just use that example of you betting on the Rams to have covered there. I've got a friend who loves to do what he calls, what we've called
emotional
a happiness middle. Right? Where a happiness middle.
Okay.
So for example, he's a Bills fan and he hit his happiness middle yesterday because he actually took the Ravens plus 2.5. And
okay.
So, and the Bills won by 2. So he won his bet and his team won his happiness middle.
That's the perfect. That could not have been more perfect. You didn't, Andrews dropped that easy 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
He didn't have a chance to go to overtime and, have them either win or the Bills to win by 3. So that ended up working out perfect. That is the perfect middle right there. He won his bet. Bills are going to the AFC Championship.
There you go, right? So happiness middle is something to consider. Yeah. All right. We didn't come on here to talk about fanship and bring you on to talk about happiness middles and that kind of thing. We came on to talk about your serious work in this space, which is very serious. We cover it a lot, the regulatory landscape and what's happening, what's taking place in different jurisdictions and that kind of thing. But you follow this much more closely than we do. Even I was looking at some of your articles thinking, wow, I hadn't heard about this. Oh, I didn't know this was happening. You're doing some fantastic work out there, Robert. So first of all, kudos to you, because this isn't an easy space to cover, is it?
No, thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. It's a very eclectic, a lot of things going on, not just legislatively, but or state by state. But I mean, now you're seeing a lot of the federal government getting involved with this. You've got things going on in Canada that affect what's happening here in the U.S. Things that have happened in England that are just starting to affect what's happening here in the U.S. There's a lot to write about. I mean, it's more than just, hey, look, what state? Because the vast majority of states have already legalized sports betting. I mean, 38 states or 39 plus DC, I believe, have legalized some form of sports betting. So the majority of states have sort of dipped their toes in it already. But yeah, there's always something to report on. There are always new bills. I mean, I've written last week, I wrote several articles about new bills that are cropping up about whether or not to increase sports betting taxes. You've got a couple new bills that just popped up. I saw today where they're sort of taking into account what a lot of federal lawmakers want regarding sports betting advertisements and promos and in-game betting. There's always something to sort of jump into and dig your teeth into and really sort of report on. So it's a very interesting space. And, like I mentioned before, it's a hell of a lot better than medical journalism or local politics. It's much more interesting than that. So happy to be a part of it and happy to devote my time and energy to it.
Well, happy to have someone like you covering it and keeping us informed. Our audience is made up of a whole lot of sharp sports bettors out there and those who are hoping to become sharp sports bettors. And a big part of staying sharp in this space is knowing what the rules are, what's changing, where it's changing, how it could impact you in your jurisdiction. What would you say are some of the top trends or issues that maybe we should be paying attention to in this year ahead?
Other than the obvious of, there are still several very large markets that don't have legalized regulated gaming. I mean, Florida is not fully open. You have one operator in Florida. It's all controlled by Hard Rock Bet. There's always some rumblings about FanDuel and DraftKings and other operators potentially going to Florida. Obviously, Texas has no regulated sports betting. California has no regulated sports betting. I mean, those are three massive markets that could potentially top New York. I mean, New York is head and shoulders above every other state right now, just in terms of handle, sports betting, tax revenues. I mean, they're at a 51% tax rate. So, I mean, that's to be expected. But those are three states right there that, if legalized, they could jump ahead of the largest sports betting market in the world in New York, within the year if they legalize. But other than that sort of obvious narrative, you definitely, the next things that people should be looking out for, I think, and you're starting to see it already a little bit, is are states re-examining their sports betting tax rates. And not for the better for operators. You have in Maryland right now, the governor has already proposed doubling the tax rate from 15% to 30%, which would really, sort of jut Maryland up at sort of the top of the list or near the top of the list for states regarding sports betting taxes. Ohio has already doubled their rate. They doubled their rate 7 months into sports betting. They went from 10% to 20% almost instantaneously because they saw how much money was being left on the table. You saw in Illinois this past year, they have the first in the state, a tiered tax system where they will tax you at different rates. They'll tax operators at different rates for how much revenue they bring in every single month. This was obviously very different from their original. I think they started off at 15%, and now the largest operators are being taxed. I think it's the 40% is the threshold right now. So what does this mean? Why does this have anything to do with, sharp bettors, things like that? The more you see that, the higher taxes, the less promos you're going to get, the less free money you're going to get, the less bonuses you're going to get. It really causes operators to really re-examine what they can give bettors. They may have to sort of, jigger the juice on certain bets. I mean, that's always a threat. They say, we're going to have to take more, or the lines are going to suffer because of the tax rates. I really haven't seen that yet. It's always a threat that they make when states are sort of re-examining their taxes, but certainly something that's, that you can see is that, hey, look, like some of these promos, these really nice promos in some of these states, they're gone when you have to pay. These operators are paying 30 or 40% when they were originally paying 15%. So that's something that's pretty big that you can look forward, or that people can look to. And then, I mentioned it a little earlier before, but you're also going to see some federal stuff, which would really, really impact the markets and what people can bet on. There's something called the Safe Bet Act right now that has been introduced, which would, very much limit sports betting advertisements. It would limit in-game betting, and it would really sort of put a clamp on what operators can do in certain states. And just recently, you see a lawmaker in Massachusetts has introduced a bill that pretty much mirrors what they want to do in the Safe Bet Act and increase taxes to 51%. It would completely eliminate in-game sports betting in Massachusetts. Look, and we're laughing about this. Like, it doesn't really look from where I'm sitting. Like, the chances of something like that passing is less than like 5%. Like, there's just no way. But just the fact that they're starting to talk about this, and that there are discussions that are sort of coming from, these federal bills. I mean, that could be something. Hey, look, like, all right, well, maybe we won't do 51% tax rate, but hey, maybe we could, talk about some ways to limit in-game betting, or,
why?
Well,
why? What's the rationale?
The rationale is that in-game betting is extraordinarily bad for somebody that has a problem with gambling. It's just saying, look, you can make all of these micro bets. Instead of just betting on, hey, here's an outcome of the game, I'm going to bet on this. You can bet on, in some cases, what the next pitch is going to be in baseball, or if this team will get a first down. Will the next run be over or under 4 yards? It's just giving people that may have a problem with gambling thousands of more options to bet and lose money and take advantage of, some of them may have an addictive nature. Right. Do I go back and forth. I mean, I think problem gambling is a big issue. I think there are ways that I think there are things that can help people with problem gambling. I don't know if like an elimination of in-game betting is going to be a solution for this. I think if people want to do that, they're going to find a way to do that. Hey, look, people can bet with Bovada or any of a number of other offshore unregulated books and get their fix that way. I don't think you need to go that far, sort of. On that side, I think there's maybe something in the middle where there could be more problem gambling services, or you could use AI to maybe better identify people that may have some interesting betting habits and sort of limit them. I don't know. I think it's a very severe overreaction to what they're trying to do, but just the fact that this has been introduced and this is sort of in the ether right now leads me to think that there could be a lot more states that will start having these types of discussions.
It's just seems like it's like, did you not know what you guys were getting into? So you go legalize sports betting and then you take away elements of it because you think there's too much of it, and then you increase the tax on the operator that is the operator isn't even profitable today, and then you increase the tax on them. Like, what do you want out of this? You want a bunch more money, but not at the risk of the public's, betting. And then of course, what happens, you already alluded to it, you push everyone back into the gray markets.
Absolutely.
Doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I can see states wanting to take a look at the tax rates. So the tax rates were pretty low. I mean, when these bills were introduced and passed a couple years ago after, PASPO was repealed and states started rolling out these bills in 2018, I mean, they were like 10%. Like a 10% sports betting tax rate is nothing. Like that's absolutely nothing for what you're getting out of this. I could see why you'd want to maybe take a look at that, maybe say, hey, look, you're making a lot more money than we thought. This was really low. We let you have your fun for these last couple of years. We're going to edge it up, maybe from 10 to 20 or from 20 to 40. I think the in-game stuff is a little, it's severe. It's very severe. I think there needs to be some type of personal responsibility as well. You're punishing a majority of sports bettors that don't have problems. And you're basically saying, okay, since a small amount of people, the vast minority of people that do bet on sports, they have a problem with this, so nobody can have it. Just something about that sits kind of wrong to me. I look at like the alcohol industry or the tobacco industry where, there are hey, look, like, yeah, there are people that have problems and there are services out there to help these people sort of overcome their problems. But you're also not saying, okay, since there are people out there that are alcoholics, we're going to ban alcohol altogether. I kind of view it in the same way as sports betting. It's just my opinion. Certainly, I don't know if it's the right one, but that's just how I see it from an outside looking in perspective.
Yeah, that's a good comparison there, comparing it to alcohol or tobacco. And I mean, even look at the opioid epidemic. That went unchecked for how long, right? So
when?
yeah, exactly. In many ways, still is. But you brought up, we're talking about Massachusetts, so why don't we, stay there for now? Because it's something we've been covering so closely here on our podcast that really sort of impacts our audience in a big way is the practice of limiting bettors at the individual level. And we know that the Massachusetts Gaming Commission is, exploring this very closely. Where do you sort of see that conversation going in the year ahead?
I could definitely see new regulations coming out in terms of not necessarily saying, hey, look, you can't offer, I don't know if people know, but, there's this whole VIP limiting type stuff that's going on right now. I did one of the things I really point to from over the last year, I wrote a very long story about VIP programs and sort of the behind the scenes look at how they entice people to keep betting. And, people shared text messages with me about, from VIP hosts. I'm sure you guys seem like you're in it. I'm sure you had some experiences with VIP programs.
We might have had a few VIP hosts.
There you go. Yeah. In terms, so the limits and the VIP stuff really goes hand in hand, which kudos to the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, because they're sort of the first to really pick up on this, where you have these VIP hosts that are basically saying, hey, look, if you won too much last week, we can't give you any bonuses. We can't give you any free bets this week. But if you lose hand over fist, and this is coming anecdotally from people that I've talked to, when you're on that real big downswing, that's when the VIPs swoop in and say, hey, you want free tickets? Why don't you deposit another $500 into your account? Do you want to keep betting? Here's some more money to keep betting as long as you deposit some more money. So it goes hand in hand with limitations, because in the same point, if you start winning too much, and the operators, you guys know, the operators will deny this up and down. But if you start winning too much, that's when they start putting caps on your bets. So it's really sort of this predatory cycle where, if you're in a VIP program and you're losing money, they want you to keep depositing, and they really sweeten the pots to, hey, here's some more free bets. Here's some more swag, some merchandise. Here's some more betting deposit bonuses. We'll match your deposit if you deposit next week. But then on the flip side, if you start winning, they're going to limit the amount of money you can bet. They're going to take away your VIP status and just say, hey, look, analytically, you don't work for us anymore as a VIP customer. So the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, they saw this going on and they said, well, wait a minute. What are we doing here? Are you guys limiting people because you think they have problem gaming habits, that you think they're a danger to themselves? Or are you limiting people because they're beating you, because they're taking you for money? So they're the first gaming commission that have ever brought any of these companies to the table and said, like, hey, look, explain yourself. Like, we're giving you this public forum. We need to know what goes into your limiting process, what goes into your VIP process. Why is somebody limited? Why is somebody a VIP? The operators, the first meeting they had, the operators all no-showed. Every single operator said, we're not coming. We're not talking.
Yeah, we remember that.
In a public setting. Other than Ballybet. I'll give Ballybet all the credit in the world. But
and they weren't even in the state. They weren't even operating in the state.
They were licensed. Yeah, they were licensed, but they had not yet launched in the state. Kudos to them. They went. They got so much bad press. This is my theory. They got so much bad press. They got killed by people just saying, no one's going to talk about this. They finally said, okay, we're all going to go. They basically gave sort of the answers that you thought they would, that, oh, we do this, nobody gets limited, or, if you are limited, it's because, you just, you exhibited problem behavior, gaming.
You're a cheater. You're a cheater. That's what they said.
Well,
they basically said winners are cheating.
They did. That was part of it, but, but then no one said anything about, anecdotally, you guys have heard stories, I'm sure, of people saying, I started winning. I was up, $10K over 1 month. I couldn't bet more than $5. Like, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't doing anything different. And the Gaming Commission is saying, look, we need to have some safeguards in place for the consumer, because, you can't just be limiting people because they're beating you at your own game, because they're winning money on the books. You can't be doing it. Like, this is not something that needs to be going on right now. So they were the first to do it. They're still sort of waiting on, they requested data from the operators to see exactly what goes into how you're limited, to how many people are limited. Still waiting on that. But yeah, that's definitely going to be something that states are going to talk about, to examine, definitely in 2025. I could see Ohio taking a long, good look at this. Their gaming commission is very on the board. New Jersey has been very consumer friendly. In the past, they're one of the few states in the country that says if a sports book messes up on a line, that they have to honor any and all bets that are taken or won. Most of the other states allow the operators to sort of void these bets if there are these obvious errors. I could see them taking a look at it. It's going to be a big, depending on what actually ends up coming out of this Massachusetts thing, that's going to be a big story. That's going to be a big, big thing for states to look at as we move forward into 2025.
Love it. Looking forward to seeing that. That's sort of music to our ears to know that, other states may sort of follow suit investigating that, because this is a big sort of topic for us. There's something else came across my desk. Somebody in our community posted this to our Discord just this past week. Something that I thought was very concerning, because, again, our audience, very much winning sports bettors, winning consistently, and saw this bill in Iowa that would make it a felony to engage in proxy betting. Have you seen this? And what do you think about this bill? Do you think it's something that could get passed?
I have seen it. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I think it does stand a fairly decent chance at legalization. I don't. So what are people saying in you mentioned in your Discord? What are their big concerns about this?
Well, look, out there, because of limiting, right?
Sure.
Oftentimes now people have to go down this path of finding, people to work with as proxies.
Sure.
And it's a sort of common kind of practice. And once you sort of get limited at too many books, and depending on where you live, determines how many books you have access to and that kind of thing. And then so when we start to see that, hey, look, a state is considering a piece of legislation that would criminalize these people. It's one thing for the sports books to say, you can't do this. If you're caught doing this, we won't pay you out. Fine. Right? Like, that's one thing. It's a whole other thing to say for a state, your government, to come to you and say, if you do this, you're going to jail for 5 years.
Sure. Yeah, look, I could see something like that being legalized, but I think the burden of prosecution would be a lot in terms of proving that you're taking proxy bets, that you're engaged in this. I don't know how many resources Iowa would dedicate to trying to bust proxy bettors. I mean, how you gonna, just off the top of my head, how you gonna undoubtedly prove that somebody is taking bets from a number of other people and placing them for their own sake? I don't know. I mean, this could be just one of those, like, hey, look, sounds really good on paper. We're going to pass this to just say, hey, look what we're doing in terms of, cracking down on this illegal type of gambling. But I can't see them devoting a lot of resources into, and if they did, I mean, doesn't Iowa have something better to do than prosecute, people that are taking proxy bets or engaging in proxy bets and having them be felons? I don't know. That's just, I don't have a ton of insight into that. I did see it. I didn't look too much into the bill on how it would even be enforced, but what's Iowa going to do, really? I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, what are they going to, like, wiretap your phone to find out if you're proxy betting? I don't know.
Mean,
read your text.
I guess the operators, it would just be a sort of a weapon for the operators to use against the people they suspect of proxy betting, right? And that threat is, it's a significant threat. It's one thing to say, hey, we're going to close your account and you're not going to get paid out your money. It's a whole other thing to say you're going to go to jail.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like that's a bit of overkill to have someone be a felon for proxy betting. So I don't know what's going to come of that. I mean, it might be, it might be reconsidered or negotiated down, or, hey, look, maybe in the future you'll just be banned from sports. I don't know. It's a weird thing. I think it's sort of a overkill in terms of what they're looking to do. And again, I just ask again, why is this? Why Ohio or Iowa? Why is Iowa like the first to like be like, oh my goodness, like, are there that many proxy bettors in Iowa? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why Iowa, specifically.
I will also say the one thing I've learned about covering this job is that politicians and lawmakers will often introduce bills that they know stand absolutely no chance at being approved, simply to say, hey, look, this is what I'm doing. No one proved it. No one backed me up, but I'm doing this to protect my constituents from this threat of proxy betting. So it could be that. It could be something like that. I don't know.
Which is crazy to think that somebody's constituents would be at risk because of proxy betting. I mean, that's just kind of nuts on all of itself. But this brings me to something else that a lot of our other guests have had on, or many of the guests we've had on, where we're talking about regulation and lawmaking and the role of the sports books and all of it. How often do you find that it's actually the sports books or the representatives of the sports books, the lobbyists, what have you, that are driving the legislative agenda in various jurisdictions? That, they're the, we've had people come on and say they're the ones writing the laws. What do you think of that?
I mean, yes and no. In terms of course, there are lobbyists that are going to be in different states. I mean, you're seeing a big push right now in Texas, for instance. Texas is very unique in the fact that they only have a legislative session once every 2 years. It's not every year. So 2025, they didn't have anything in 2024. They are going to have something in 2025. So, right when I think it was December or November, late November, you started seeing a lot of stories coming about of people saying, oh, this is the year that Texas is going to legalize sports betting. This is the year. And, I was seeing these, I'm thinking to myself, who is pushing this narrative? Because just from where I'm looking, like, there's still a huge roadblock in the Senate. Lieutenant Governor Patrick is still the leader of the Senate. He has no desire to legalize sports betting. It's a Republican majority, and if there's not a majority of Republicans in the Senate, he won't even bring up a sports betting bill to be voted on. Like, there could be a bill could potentially be passed in the Senate, but if there aren't going to be a majority of Republicans to vote for it, he will block the bill by not even bringing it up for a vote. So he's still there. There's still a huge hurdle in Texas, but you started seeing all these stories like, oh, this is the year. This is the year. There's so much positivity. Oh, the politicians, lawmakers, there's a lot of momentum behind a bill this year. And you realize that it's just lobbyists sort of pushing this agenda, trying to gain any momentum, trying to, go into the media and saying, I'm hearing that there's a lot of momentum, that everyone is on board with a sports betting bill. And then I talk to people, that are in Texas, that are, close to the situation. And they all shared the same thoughts that I did, that there's no way. There's absolutely no way. So I think the storylines can absolutely be driven by lobbyists. I don't know how much they're actually like, hey, look, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to approve. Here's, I think you mentioned that people said that they're out there, they're writing the bills. I don't know if that was literally or figuratively, but they're definitely, they definitely have the ears of some politicians, and they definitely have the ears of some people in the media. But I don't, they obviously want sports betting to be legalized. They're obviously pushing for it. You see a lot of that in Minnesota right now, where, for the umpteenth year in a row, they're going to discuss sports betting. But I think they more drive the storylines and what you hear out of the media than anything. Especially, I'm sure they're working behind the scenes to sort of broker deals and things like that. But yeah, in terms of actually like driving bills and stuff like that, I don't see too much of it. But definitely sort of what the media reports on and what you hear, I think they have a big hand in that.
Controlling the narrative, doing the best they can. Robert, I feel like I could pick your brain forever here. Would you be interested in coming back on at some point, perhaps later in the year? We can sort of talk about what's happening. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we could talk about all the states that really promised that they were going to get sports betting legalized this year that fail as always in the last couple of minutes. But sports betting, iGaming is going to be the next big wave. I mean, you may get a state this year that'll legalize iGaming. Maybe we'll get lucky. I mean, just throw your hopes out the window for Texas. That's not happening this year. California, obviously, it was not going to happen. I'll leave you with this. The only state that I think has a chance, a major market state would be, and I mentioned Minnesota. I think they finally found some solutions during last year's session. One of the big roadblocks was sort of who would control sports betting, the tribes or the state racetracks. And then you had the charitable organizations that were sort of in there saying, look, we need some money too, because, bingo is going to be affected by this. It seemed like there was finally a solution at the very end of the 2024 session. It was, when I say the very end, it was like the final day. They finally came to a solution, and they just didn't have time to sort of find an overall agreement between the politicians. I think this year, maybe, and especially if that sort of agreement is still in place. I mean, Minnesota right now, I don't know if you guys know everything that's going on there, but there's a huge struggle for power between the Republicans and the Democrats. So something like sports betting could potentially get pushed back if this sort of lingers as the session goes on and you have each side trying to block each other. Something sort of non-major like sports betting may get pushed to the side. But I think of any of the states that are going to look at it, Georgia, Minnesota, Nebraska, Mississippi, Alabama, I think Minnesota would have the best chance. But when I say the best chance, I'd put it at like 45% right now. Right. I don't have a lot of hope for a lot of states this year to get anything done.
All right. Well, good to know. I know you'll keep your sort of ear to the beat and watching it closely for us. And where can people follow you? How can they stay up to date on your work?
Sure. Like you mentioned before, most of my stuff is published on sportsbettingdime.com. And then you can follow on Twitter or X, whatever you're calling it now. It's at R Linnehan, RLINNEHANSR. So that's at RLINNEHANSR on X. I publish everything there as well. I'll do some rundowns of meetings, live updates, things like that. So yeah, find anything there.
Awesome. Give this guy a follow if you want to stay up to date on all things sports betting, regulatory landscape in North America. A great follow there. Robert, thanks so much for coming on our show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, time now for the Gridiron Grind, and we've got John Wilson with us. John, welcome in, buddy. Big week ahead here with conference championships. But how you doing? How was your weekend? How have things been going football-wise?
Good. January's been great. Been like a really good month so far. I think especially pregame, it was a bad year for the books, a bad year for a lot of the sharp bettors, but I think the underdogs have covered all 4 games in the divisional weekend. So it's been good. And if you were sharp, you got like on the favorite at the beginning, or you got ahead of the line movement. In a lot of those games, you won both sides. So the books got lit up again, I think, in that way. So
did you hit some middles, like some pregame middles?
Yeah. I had the Chiefs -7, bought that when it opened, and then took the Texans when it closed. I got +10, paid a little bit of juice for that one. He obviously hit that on that safety. I know we had that live as well. And then had the Chiefs in a teaser, won that. Obviously the Bills won outright, so we won that one. And then what was the other game that, the Rams, Eagles, had the Eagles in a teaser, and then had the Rams +6.5. So scooped that one as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The Eagles, I think I didn't eat the Eagles pick, and then the Rams plus. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nice. Well done. All right. What are we doing with this upcoming championship weekend, conference championship weekend?
Yeah, so interesting lines. I think on our stream I said I thought the Chiefs would open as an underdog. That's because I make the lines as the Bills to be slight favorite, like a 1-point favorite. I think that's probably where most people are going to have it if they're just grading it, as 2 teams. But I think it's that Mahomes factor, the Chiefs, as underdogs in the playoffs. Like it's just the books, I think, are just afraid to put that number there because of how much attention that's going to get both from sharp bettors and public bettors. I do think the public's going to come in pretty heavy on the Bills in this game as an underdog, just because I think they think the Chiefs are weak and are down, and I think that's probably true. But I think you're playing against more than just the Chiefs when you play against the Chiefs, right? So it's going to be there's some extra points there that I think are factored in. So we're going to see where that goes. I don't really know what I'm going to do with that game. I do like teasing the Bills on that side, but the other game I'm kind of a little puzzled which side I want to tease. Though I think it makes sense. Maybe you could do both. Get the Commanders to 11.5, the Eagles to win the game. I think you could kind of just hedge your bet there, but it's hard to imagine this Chiefs team, in my opinion, beating that Bills team by more than a touchdown. It's kind of where it is. But that Eagles line actually really surprised me. I will say that it opened at 4.5, 5, and it's actually gone up. Looks like it probably will hit 6, and then it'll probably get some resistance. But I actually make that closer to a field goal. But I think that's just because I'm just much more skeptical of this Eagles team than I think a lot of the other sharp money out there is. I think a lot of them, I've heard some people say they have this 6, 7 when they model it. I just can't get there with this Eagles team. I couldn't get there last week. I think the Commanders have been lucky. They've been fortunate, but they just took it to the Lions. They won that game outright. They're the better team in that game. I'm not convinced the Eagles were the better team in that game. I think they got some help with the weather and, facing an indoor team in the snow. And there were a couple fumbles and they got the ball in range. So, they got outgained in that game. I don't know. I think giving me that many points in a divisional matchup when those 2 teams have played each other close in 2 games this year, I think I just got to take the points there.
All right, Pace, what do you think? You've been crushing the teasers this year.
Lost last week with the Lions, but I mean, shit happens. So this is the thing, right? When I look back on this playoff, I thought the Bucks played a phenomenal game in the wild card round when they lost to the Commandos. The Commando, they just simply ran into a buzzsaw, and I think that was validated last week when they went into Detroit, the most hyped, most bet on, really best-ish team in football. And they fucking stuck it to the Detroit Lions. They scored 45 points. Defensively, they didn't look great in the first half. But in the second half, they shut those Lions down. They played a spectacular game of football, half of football, especially obviously offensively. Watching the Eagles beat the Rams, I felt like if that game was played out 10,000 times and that snowstorm didn't hit at the exact time it hit at, the Rams would actually have won that game more than 50% of the time, based on what I watched. Of course, there's other factors. But as soon as the snow let up, the Rams flew down the field twice, and then obviously they turned it over on downs the second time to win the game. Jalen Hurts looks like, people would make fun of Lamar Jackson that he's a running back. Jalen Hurts looks like just some sort of running back. He doesn't look like he can complete a series of throws downfield. And despite them not looking great in that game, they always more or less had the lead. I think they had the lead the entire game. There was a moment there with the safety where they were down 1 point. The Rams got the ball back to drive to go take the lead, and Williams fumbled the football. But what happens if Philly gets in trouble here in the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl if they make it, right? Like, and we have to watch Jalen Hurts be a passing primary quarterback. Saquon Barkley, this is credit to the Eagles offensive line and credit to Saquon, but I also think it's a huge fault of the Rams in this game, letting him score 2 massive touchdowns where they just handed the ball off and he goes untouched into the end zone is insane to me. That they let, like, you got a game plan for Saquon, right? What if the Eagles are down and this is now something they can't rely on? So I don't know. I think they're a lot weaker than people think they are. I'm not saying they won't win the Super Bowl, but I've just seen some serious flaws in their game. God, I want those Bills to win. As for teasers, I just echo John's sentiment 100%. I think you could go either side of the Eagles Commandos and be relatively safe. I'm going on the Commandos side after everything I just said. And the Bills side for sure at that plus 8, plus 8.5 is just beautiful. So that'll be the last 2-pick teaser of the season. And then we need to know, like, I've really enjoyed doing this stuff with John on. Where do we go with this? Do we pick up the gridiron grind? Obviously, we'll do one for the Super Bowl, but do we pick it up, next September? Or, like, what do people want to hear from John? I think if anyone can let us know, in the comments or has any feedback or opinions on it, we definitely want to hear it because, I've really enjoyed having him break some stuff down. And, we do record these things a couple days before they come out. So, like, if John's breaking down the Sunday night NBA game before there's lines out, I don't know if it's gonna make sense,
Yeah.
Perhaps some strength of schedule and future stuff, John. I know you do really well with that stuff in basketball. And again, like, that Rams call at 41 to 1 here. I think it was a great bet. Obviously it's behind us here, but watching that football game and knowing that if they're 3rd and 2 and Stafford takes that sack, if they score the touchdown, they probably win the game, and they're at home for the NFC Championship, like at 41 to 1. At that point in the game, I think them to win the Super Bowl got as low as 10.0. And when they were still down 6. So we actually had a great wager, and it just obviously didn't come through.
I really like that wager too. And but we got to figure out, maybe John, you join us for like CFL.
Yeah, talk pregame CFL.
We'll have an American come on and give us the lines for CFL.
Yeah, CFL's great. We could do that. We could talk about CFL. I do bet CFL pregame. We could do. There's a lot of NHL stuff that I bet pregame that you can somewhat talk about in advance. Things like scheduling spots on back-to-backs. Kind of just do a preview of the week. Like, hey, here's when, like, the big Thursday and Saturday slate coming up, it's like, here's some games that I'm probably going to be betting like a favorite on a puck line because the other team's on a back-to-back, stuff like that. There's some things out there that you can look forward to. NBA is kind of the same way with those scheduling. Those back-to-backs are pretty rough. So
cool. Well, we'll definitely have to have you on, though, in the week leading up to Super Bowl too, because we're going to want to hear, that'll really be the last one, and who knows, maybe we'll have a few other people on, and we'll sort of do a whole Super Bowl roundtable or something in a couple weeks.
Yeah, Shane, at the top of the show, we kind of mentioned, the Jake Elliott missed PAT with Rob on, and the safety obviously came up already, and the whole conspiracy thing when we, kind of get closer to the Super Bowl, it comes out every year.
Oh yeah.
Last year, the big narrative was the color of the logo. Everyone was talking about how it was going to be Ravens Niners because of the color
Oh right.
of
Yeah.
the Super Bowl and how it was right the previous however many years. And then, of course, everyone was talking about the Taylor Swift stuff and that the NFL has to have the Chiefs in for viewership and all that kind of stuff. And then they see the safety and then everyone's like, oh my God, the NFL's rigged. So people have to understand, like, if you're on our live stream, Kenny called the safety out prior. We touched on that. There's a reason why Andy Reid does that in that situation. And it's because the punt cannot be blocked. If there's a blocked punt for a touchdown, they can kick onside and still win the football game. And they would have sent the house at that punter. They would have sent every player. They might not have even had someone back to return it. So once you start to understand live betting and value in all sports, you start to see these things before they've happened. Number one, because you've seen them before. You've seen them with different coaches in different scenarios and different situations. But then you start to expect them, where you go, oh, will they take a safety here? And why would they do that? And that's why. The statistical probability went from near impossible to impossible once that safety was scored. It was still would have been a crazy long shot. People have to understand that. And like the Jake Elliott missing field goals and missing PATs, just go through the season. He's missed them. Yeah. He's been missing all year.
I mean, he's not the only one. Let's cut him some slack. This season was marked by kickers missing extra points, missing what should be chip shot field goals, just missing. Justin Tucker, greatest kicker of all time, worst season of his life. Like, right. I don't know what it was, but kickers were missing.
Right. And like, just look at the Rams-Eagles game with like Stafford fumbling, Kyron fumbling. Look at the Lions game with Goff throwing however many picks he did. Jamo threw a pick. Goff fumbled. Shit does happen on the football field. And when you are in the driver's seat to win a game, you really want to limit that as much as possible. And then we just went through these games where it was all below zero, but below freezing. And it's snowing on the field. Like that further increases, the slickness of the ball and the feel of the ball, and the list goes on. So like, to all the conspiracy theorists out there, there's definitely validity to some things in some spots, but like that safety just simply was not one of them. Yeah, and no one's talking about that. Everyone's just showing the situation where it led to a cover or a lack of cover. But also too, whenever you have that narrative, you fixate on the 9.5. What about all the other lines? Like there was a 7.5 out there at one point during the week. That line wasn't impacted by it, right? So anyways.
Yeah. With stuff like that, I always say, like, write down the list of things that make it seem like a conspiracy, and then start writing down the list of things that make it not seem like a conspiracy, and just see which list gets longer much faster than the other. And you can typically find some holes in what you think. It's the same thing is true when people say like, oh, this is meant to be, like, my birthday is on this day and he got this job on this day, so it's just like destiny. It's like, all right, cool. Now write down a list of all the things that don't make sense, that don't have anything in common, and see how destined it is. But yeah. And I'm like, I talk about the officiating and stuff for like the fishiness of things that's going on in games all the time. But it's really just, a lot of it's just human nature, like superstars get the benefit of the doubt on in calls, because the officials are, maybe they're used to seeing them. Maybe sometimes they're familiar with them. They're friends. They also subconsciously know that it's better for their company when things go well for these people, and nobody makes like a conscious decision, I think, most of the time for it, but it's just kind of human nature, or when teams are down and they get a million PI flags, like we see it in college, right? Teams down 42 to 7 in a bowl game, and then they get 30 yards of penalties to go down the field and score some garbage at the end. Like it's people feeling sorry for these 20-year-olds that have gotten their ass kicked all game. Like it's
totally. There's a
cool.
human element to all this stuff. And has any all that color, the logo stuff last year? No one actually, once it didn't come true, you just stopped hearing it. No one goes out and debunks it. No one says you guys are idiots. It's just like, it's just done. You just don't hear about it. It's just on to the next thing.
Go find the next conspiracy.
And also too, back to the safety, the Chiefs wouldn't have done that down 10 because then who did they play? Houston. Houston would have had the ball with a potential Hail Mary with 6-7 seconds left, or a hook and ladder 6-7 seconds left, or if they got the touchdown, the 2-point conversion, they would have tied the game. They specifically did it because, and the scenarios where you would do it is up 2 scores where the safety doesn't make it a 1-score game. And that's the only time you would see something like that. And even then, they wouldn't have done it if they weren't closer to their end zone. If they were at midfield, they may have just run around and punt it. They may have run around, thrown it in the air. They may have just punted it, but it's unlikely they would have ran back 50 yards because someone could have caught them, tackled them, scored the touchdown, kicked an onside kick. It was a perfect storm for that to make sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we're going to get a lot more conspiracies floating around. We've got this big championship weekend. There's going to be all sorts of shit after that, even leading up to it, I'm sure, especially with the Chiefs being involved, and then of course the Super Bowl itself. So we're gonna have lots to talk about in terms of all that. But before we go, quick shout out to our sponsor, Pinnacle. We've been mentioning the teasers all along through the Gridiron Grind. Pinnacle is the place to bet those if you want to get the very best odds. You can get all the different lines that are mentioned typically over at Pinnacle. And Pace, we've got a contest going on, right?
Yeah, so really simple. You need to join our Discord community. If you're not a paying member of In Play Live, you can join the free section of the Discord. Once you get in there, you just message at Sabrina your $10 or more bet slip from your Pinnacle account with a full screenshot. Details will be in the comments here, and that gets you entered for a $1,000 giveaway. April 1st. Last week I said March 1st. It's a quarter. The quarter first. It'll be April 1st. The first episode after April 1st that we do the giveaway, and that's how you get entered to get $1,000 deposited into your Pinnacle account, and you can head over to pinnacle.com/inplaylive to get your account set up.
And that is 1,000 USD, so it's like 10,000 Canadian.
Literally. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, a lot of fun on this episode. Till next week. Pace, John, sports bettors around the world. Keep beating those books. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Lines. Remember to like, download, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Have a betting story or want to be featured on our podcast? Drop a note in the comments below. And if you want to join In Play Live, use promo code Behind the Lines.